This is the whole game set up, a prototype version of it. But we got our map. We got 4 player aids off to the side, player aid slash trackers. Got the economic tracker built into the map and some army boards built into the map. I'll talk about what those do. All the units as chits across the bottom here, all laid out. And all the other player components over here on the right. So this is what you can expect will be in the base package of this game once and if we get funded on Kickstarter. The Kickstarter campaign has not started yet, nor has the pre-launch started, but a lot of wheels are moving in the background. I got a website going for this, Facebook group, trying to keep everybody updated. But I figured I'd do a video overview of the map mostly, but also the whole game as in general. This is not going to be a rules video. I will do that at another date, but this is just going to be an overview of what would come with the game and what it looks like. This is, again, all prototype stage material here. So I would imagine that the final product, well, not imagine, but I know the final product would have higher quality chits if funded on Kickstarter through the with the use of the manufacturer I plan to use. The map itself, the game board, this is something I prefer, which is a smooth vinyl print. That's 5 foot wide by 36 inches tall, so 3 foot tall. But the final version of the game will have a folded out board that is assembled. So think 3 different board pieces that are assembled together, and each one of those board pieces folds out as well. So if any of you are familiar with Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition, it came with 3 individual boards that you would join together to play the game. This would have that, but those boards would unfold as well, because just because the size of the board is so big. I did a rulebook video about a week ago, so no need to really go into too much detail over it, but I will flip through it once again just a little bit. But yeah, let's start with the big thing right in the middle. That's the map. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Yep, now I got this going. So as you can see, we got some terrain built in here. Now terrain doesn't really play that much of an effect in the game, but I'm just going to sort of pan over the map so you can sort of see some of the details. And this is a 99% final version of the map. There are a few typos and things like, for example, the C-zone numbers got jumbled up here, which that was just my oversight there because I had changed the C-zone line, and originally the 3 was over there, but now it's not. So I have to move that 3 over here. This is C-zone 3. This is C-zone 2. So yeah, a little bit of a screw up there. And Salamanca is not supposed to have a mountain icon in it. So those are 2 little things there. But otherwise, apart from maybe a spelling error here or there, this is looking pretty final to me. The style is definitely nailed down for sure. But like I mentioned before, the map is 5 feet wide, so 60 inches wide. And it's 36 inches tall, with the bottom portion being for game-related purposes like the army boards and the income tracker, which are 4 inches tall and run alongside the bottom of the board. Got a little logo there in the corner. Now the army boards, what are these used for? So when you run out of space in your territories, because sometimes some armies can get really big, that's what these are used for, these army boards. There are 7 of these across here, and I've found that with the chits, this is bigger than I actually need it to be, these army boards. So I plan on the final version of the map to squeeze just 1 more of these in. So I have 8 army boards going across. The base version of the game will have some additional off-map army boards that you can put off to the side. So there can be some games where you have 10 or so armies on the board, and you may want to have those separate army boards. Again, a lot of these territories are big enough to accompany big armies anyway. Like, for example, Piedmont, Switzerland. These are all pretty much big enough for that, but you may have multiple allied armies in the same territory, and that's where these army boards become pretty necessary, I would say. Okay, so what am I going to go over here? I'm just going to pan over some more of the map here. We got the map stretches all the way from the Americas. So Louisiana Territory is the furthest west we really go, and parts of northern Canada. And then we have, parts of what would eventually become Mexico. We have South America, we have Venezuela, parts of Brazil. We got the Caribbean. The Caribbean's actually pretty important in this game for victory points. We got the tips of North Africa here. I have a built-in Cape route system so that we don't have to include all of Africa on the map for you to go travel around Africa to the Indian Ocean or Indian Ocean back to the Atlantic. So what you would do is your entry and exit points from and to the Atlantic are in C-Zone 31 and 32, and you would go into the Cape route, and each round it can only move one space along the Cape route. So that's how that works. And then your entry and exit point from the Indian Ocean is over here in C-Zone 51. So the map stretches, again, from the Caribbean, the Americas, all the way to the Middle East and India, as well as Siberia and Central Asia. So this is a huge sandboxy game. Lots of different strategies are possible. Getting back to the map here, before I get sidetracked, you'll notice that there are capitals, which have the crown icons here. Let me do a better zoom here. Oops, there we go. We have key ports. So key ports do have a role in this game. You'll notice with the anchor icon, and they have a name. Genoa, we have here a Genoa, Valletta, various others. Key ports can get you additional income, and they are the only territories that you can build naval units out of. So they are quite important in this game, and they do tie into 2 victory points, which are 10 key ports and 12 key ports. I'll get to the victory point tracker later. So you have Vienna, and you have Berlin, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. So Russia has 2 functional capitals. The capitals do have a function in this game. If they're captured, it doesn't mean that you can't collect income anymore, but your units will cost more if that happens. And capitals also play a role into the victory points, the hegemony victory point. So Paris, of course, we have London, a few key ports in England. So you get an idea there. Also, you'll notice these mountain icons here, and a little bit of a change in the terrain as well. It's a little darker, more red. You kind of notice it here in Switzerland. You got the Alps here. You got the Carpathian Mountains. You got the Middle East with various mountain ranges. The way they function, so you have these, you have the change in territory color, but you also have the mountain icon here in dark red. It costs 2 movements to move into one of those territories. So if you have a unit that moves 4 spaces, like a light cavalry unit, it would go 1, 2, and then 3, 4 into this territory. So 1, 2, 3, 4, because those are 2 mountain territories. Moving out of a mountain territory does not count as 2 movements. That's how those work. And you might be noticing, okay, well, this map isn't anatomically correct because you have Europe, which is so huge, and it looks so close to the Americas. Well, there's a gameplay purpose for this. So I'm condensing the map so that there's less space taken up on your table, therefore less cost for the map as well. And you'll notice in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, you have these icons in the sea zone. It's like a wave icon, and those are long distance sea zones. So those are sea zones, when you enter them, you must stop. And when you're leaving one of those sea zones to move to another one of those types of sea zones, you must stop again. So they basically costs all your movement to move into one of those territories. That's how those work. So getting from Europe to the Caribbean and the Americas does take some time. And I found that this was a really good solution to have this, instead of adding a whole other foot of map space, just to have a bunch of dead space on the map, essentially, in the Atlantic, which doesn't see that much action, I would say, in terms of naval combat. You do have ships going back and forth throughout the game, but you don't see a lot of naval combat in the middle of the Atlantic during the Age of Sail. So this was a very conscious decision, and I'm glad I went with it. And then you'll notice, too, if we're looking at markers on the map, you'll have these skull and crossbone icons, and that's where you can hire privateers in this game, and they're units that you control, that you can move only within or into other piracy sea zones. So they do play a role in this game too. And there are privateer markers that you would put underneath your naval unit. Okay, and then you'll notice island territories. So they have like these dotted line boundaries around them, just to give yourself some space when you're placing units in them. Yeah, you'll notice some of those. The Caribbean has a ton of these. The Mediterranean has a few as well. You'll notice bigger islands don't even need those borders around them, like Cyprus and Crete. You also have Ceylon over here. And you'll notice too, each of the major powers has like a color outline to its original starting territory. So for the French, you have this blue outline. For the Spanish, it's a little harder to see, but they have a yellow outline. For the coalition miners, you have a teal outline, which are Kingdom of Sardinia, Portugal, and Naples. They all have the teal, as well as their colonial possessions as well. So you have Brazil, French Guiana for the French, of course. You have the British with a red outline. I don't know if it's picking up in the lighting here. Yeah, you got Hanover, they control that. You have the Austrians with a white outline, the Prussians with a black or dark gray outline, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which is a light green, which I think was a good complement in color to the forest or dark green for the Russians. You've got the Ottomans with a brown, like a reddish brown. You have Sweden with orange, Denmark, Norway with purple. I think that's a good contrast up there as well. The Americans with a different shade of blue than the French. And that's basically it. Those are the major powers. I'm trying to think what else I need to cover about land. Oh yeah, you do have these icons here. These play a role. These are major battle regions. And no, they're not the only areas where you can have a major battle. Definitely not the case. But they play a role in this game. And again, that's a rule thing, but they're important areas of the map, strategically and diplomatically. I think that's it. All I want to cover about the map. I mean, again, I have a built-in tracker here. Sorry for the glare, but it goes from 1 all the way to 100, as you can see here. So plenty of space. The incomes in this game tend to be higher than in most Axis and Allies games that you're probably more familiar with. It's not unusual for France or Britain to make over 100 gold a turn at a certain point in the game. But yeah, I think I covered all the main beats here. Typically, your territory values are in anywhere from 0 to 5 gold worth. I have Roman numerals here. That was a conscious choice as well. I just felt it looked just so much better. It really did. I used to have, my first iterations of the map were regular numbers, but now I really love the Roman numerals. And anywhere you see a capital, that's where a nation's flag, or major power's flag, is bigger. So you'll see Paris, they have a bigger flag in southern Ile-de-France, the territory. Brandenburg, you have Berlin for the Prussians, and so on. And then you'll have the smaller flags in all their other territories. Their territories and colonies across the board, just in case you don't know who they belong to. Yeah. And then you have your neutral territories. Forgot to go over them. So they don't have a color outline to them. You have many of the German states here. You got the Dutch Republic, a few of the Italian states, Switzerland, a lot in the Middle East and Far East. This is the map in a nutshell. I really like the way it came out, minus the little typos and little things I have to fix, but I really love the way it came out. It just feels epic. I think it blends really well with the player aids off to the side, as well as the rule book. And I'll just do a little flip through the rule book real quick in case you didn't see my other video or you don't feel like looking at it. Rule book right here, Forged by Fire rule manual. Got the logo on the back for Grand Command Gaming. Oops, I'm trying to do this with one hand here. Got the Burning Away page showcasing the page number, table of contents. So it sort of has the old parchment look, but it's burning away, hence the whole Forged by Fire thing. Gotta have that fire in there. I tried to find a way to incorporate fire on the map, and I played around with a lot of ideas where, the corner would be burning, and it looked like it was a burning parchment rolled out map. And though that looked pretty cool, it was also very distracting, and it took up a lot of space for the functionality of the map. And ultimately I decided against it, even though I liked it in some respects. I decided against it. But anyway, that's the map. And then we have the player aids. So there's 4 main player aids here, and I'm bumping into my light over here. We have the battle board. We got the diplomacy chart, which tells you the different thresholds each alliance, the French alliance or the coalition, would have to be at to either armistice or alliance, one of those major powers. We have the unit guide here. So this is basically all this information is in the rule book, but it's just a quick reference guide to how much units cost, what they can do, their attack defense values, and among other things you can purchase. And then, of course, the victory point tracker. I would say out of all of these side pieces here, that is the most important one of them all right here, because it tells the story of the game as you're going. So when you're playing the game, you're marking blue for the French alliance, which victory points they have, and then when they lose it, you put a white token on top of it. And if the coalition gets it, the coalition puts a red token over. And the reason that that's important is because you only get a diplomacy token for the victory point you achieve for the first time, as well as capitals that you've captured, or a major battle victory. So you need to be able to keep track of which victory points you've already had throughout the game. And when you see the whole tracker marked up with all these tokens, you kind of see a story of what happened with the game, which is kind of cool. There are over 30 victory points in this game, and they range, let me zoom in again, they range from 3-pointers up there with the nice big obnoxious medal up there with the Roman numeral 3 in the middle, as well as the 2-pointers and the 1-pointers. So, and they range in difficulty to get and obtain and hold on to. And there's little flags next to each medal for the victory point to show which country gets bonus income if their alliance controls that victory point. So on the left is pretty much always going to be the French, because they're greedy. They take all the bonuses away from their allies if they have them. Not always, though. But yeah, those are all the victory points. And then we have down here at the bottom, capture space for generals that have been captured, which they can be freed with the use of diplomacy tokens. And then down here, capturing capitals, little notes on little gameplay things in case you forget. Okay, so apart from the victory point tracker, we have the diplomacy tracker here, diplomacy chart. And you can see there's a little space here for the tokens that you acquire throughout the game. So these are the diplomacy tokens here, these gold ones. And these are like the most prime currency in this game. They're literally, the game is driven by these diplomacy tokens. The ability to kick major powers out of the war or bring them in is probably the hugest weapon you're going to have on this board. No matter how many units you have, how big your armies are, diplomacy is always going to be the greatest weapon. So, you know, let's say the French Alliance has 5 tokens. I'm going to take 5 of these and put them in their little box up here for the diplomacy tokens. And the coalition, the same. And then they use these tokens to influence these major powers. So the coalition starts with Austria, Prussia, Spain, coalition minors, Sweden on their side, and of course Britain. So Britain is always a member of the coalition. The French are always a member of the French Alliance. So everyone else can be played, and even the powers that start on the coalition don't always end up on the coalition. So that's the diplomacy tracker, and it does have a built-in turn order here, so you can see what the turn order is. Some of these powers, like the Ottoman Empire, United States, and Denmark, Norway, are considered dormant major powers. So they don't start the game being played by anyone, and none of the pieces move. They don't collect income. But once they're brought into the game, now they are active. They are now members of the war. And like I said, unit guide, there's not much to go over here. These are just about how the units work and just a quick reference, essentially. And then lastly, the battle board. So the battle board, it may look complicated from far away, but it's not. It's just meant to include a ton of information as quick reference in case you forget, so you don't have to keep flipping through the rule book. But in every battle, you have a center position and a flank. Your cavalry units always go to the flank because they're always attempting to flank and probe the enemy center to look for weakness. So cavalry always go to the flank, and there's a battle here on the flank, but also a battle in the center. The battle on the flank happens first, and depending on what happens, a certain amount of cavalry can break through, and then they get to roll again at double dice against the center. So the flank is hugely important, but the center is also important too, because if you destroy your enemy's center, now you can envelop the enemy's flank, and now you're firing on the flank from your flank as well as from another, basically the rear or another flank, essentially. So you don't want to lose your center. I say losing your center is probably worse, honestly. So that's the way the combat works. So basically, if you're familiar with Axis and Allies games, it works similar in the sense that the center position would be what you're used to. It's just one position that you're firing from. But now the wrinkle that's added in is that you're adding another position in there where it can influence the main part of the battle. Moving on, these are the other components that are part of the game apart from the rule book. So I was mentioning how the unit guide is sort of like a quick reference help for players. And that's what these 3 card decks are as well. You have your victory points. So you have the tracker over there, but it doesn't tell you what's involved with those victory points. Like, what makes up the Portugal VP and what makes up the Low Countries victory point. And that's where these cards come in. So Russian campaign, it actually tells you what's involved with it. And some of these have a couple caveats in them too, because the way you can get the Russian campaign depends on if you're allied with the Russians or not. So there's a way you can get the victory point if you're enemies with them, and then there's a way you can get the victory point if they're allies of yours. So it's a little bit more involved. So and these victory points stand in as your national objectives in the game too. So if you're familiar with Axis and Allies with national objectives, your victory points are national objectives essentially in this game. So you get bonus income from them, and sometimes it can be quite involved, especially the big 2 and 3 pointers right here. So yeah, got a card for each victory point. So all the information you need on victory points is there as a quick reference for players at the board. You also have that for advanced tactics. So your generals on the board, which are the most dynamic piece on the board, they command the biggest armies and basically drive the action in the game. They can acquire advanced tactics throughout the game. So that's what these chits are here as well. So there's 14 of them. And they basically give you like a modded benefit to your army. So they give you like upgrades. And these are just the cards. They tell you exactly what those advanced tactics do. Like, for example, rifling. It'll tell you exactly what it does. And what happens is if you have a general who has an advanced tactic, you take one of these chits that he has. So let's say skirmish tactics is one of them. And now I have the Swedish general, let's say him, and you put it right underneath his chit. So now when he's on the board, he has that tactic with him right here. And he may have all of his pieces on one of these army boards to save space. So your general acts as like a task force marker, essentially. And as he acquires tactics, you might be adding like rifling and what's the other one? Local conscription. And all of those are underneath that general piece. So, and plus for each tactic you have, this is of course getting into the weeds here, but for each tactic that you have, you also get some additional roles in battle with just the general itself. So there's some added benefits there. So yeah, the card deck, just a quick reference for what each of those tactics does. And then you have the special abilities deck, which this one's a really great one. This is where a lot of the historical flair comes in. Each major power almost has a special ability. The French have a ton of them. So you can see there's a lot of cards here. I'll pull them over here that the French can do. The Louisiana Purchase, that's one of them. So you may, once you come into control of Louisiana territory, if you do, you can sell it to the United States for a whole chunk of money, and that's going to help your war effort in Europe. There's a whole bunch of these here, and I want to make a separate video just on these cards to go over them and the reason I went with some of these. But you have Napoleon, of course. So Napoleon gets placed on the board in round 3, and there's a special piece just for him over there. And you have Levy and Mass, which is another really important one for the French, early in the game especially. So the French have a lot of them. They have by far the most. The coalition miners have 1. The Russians have 2. Russian Winter being one of them, right there. The Austrians have 1. The Prussians have 1. Spain has 1. Spanish revolts. So I'm just going to put these next to each of the powers. The British have 4 of them. The British are quite an involved power in this game. They're probably my favorite ones to play, honestly. And then the French would be my second favorite. So there you go. That's all the cards right there. Again, I'll do a separate video on what each of those says, but yeah. And that's another quick reference. A lot of that information still in the rulebook. And like I said, these are the advanced tactics chits right here. So you have, everything from elite training, skirmish tactics. I have doubles here, hang on. Yeah, some of these got mixed up a little bit. But local conscription, rifling, fieldworks, rapid defense, core system. That's a really underrated one. Harassment, grand battery, shrapnel, master of terrain, which has to do with your artillery. Elite cavalry, a really great one to have. Rapid movement, awesome. And plunderer. So those are amongst some of the choices that you have when you make a breakthrough. And when you're you have these advanced tactic tokens. When you want to make an advancement, you purchase one of these tokens and you roll for them at the start of your turn. And if you get a successful advancement, then you discard the token and you pick one of these chits to assign to one of your generals. So when you get an advanced tactic, it doesn't apply to all your units across the board. It applies to a specific general. So, yeah. And then some of these other pieces here, this is more getting into the rules, but they're just nice to haves, like expired movement, neutral markers, you know, because there's times where a neutral can be used to attack you. And you might be thinking, okay, what happens to the territory that they've taken over? You put one of these neutral markers there. Damage markers, so your ships can get damaged as well as your fortifications. Contested markers, so a few territories begin the game contested. Privateers, I already went over that. You have cargo markers, so you'd have your ship here and then your units it's carrying. And pass-through markers. Pass-throughs, that gets into the rules a little bit, but generals can do... They can pass through a territory that has enemy units to attack another territory, but there's some caveats involved. And that's it in some of your color blocks here. So since the chits are square and the 3D printed pieces I eventually want to have done, they will have square bases. I think that it looks better than having chips, and it looks cleaner to have these blocks that go underneath them. So for example, the silver is marks 2 units, red marks 5, and gold marks 10. So for example, if I had these neutral chits here, neutral infantry, and I had a silver underneath, that's 3 units right there. So it saves some space, saves some time. So if you had something like this, you had a red and 2 silvers, this is 10 right here. Okay, I think it looks pretty sharp. And then you got these big ones here. This is to tell your generals apart. That's all these are for. So you can have up to 3 generals per major power in this game. And you might be thinking, okay, how do I tell them apart? Well, let's say the Ottomans had 2 generals. You put one with a blue, it depends on which color you want, and one with a red. Okay, that's how you tell them apart on the board. So, yeah, that's basically it right there. And then we look at the chits. So the base game is going to have chits for its pieces to keep the costs down. 3D printed pieces are going to be an option for this game. I don't think they're going to be an option for the base Kickstarter of the game. It'd be more of an aftermarket option. But I'm working on getting a set made for me by the Johns, John Sr. and John Jr. They do great work. But if we reach a certain funding amount, I could look at possibly having injection molded pieces done. But it's so costly up front to do that I'm assuming it's not going to be done. But we'll see. You never know. If we reach a high enough amount, I could do injection molded pieces. I'm just going to kind of pan over these. You have and these are all in the turn order as well. So you have the French pieces. So you have your generals, Napoleon, infantry, elite infantry, foot artillery, light cavalry, heavy artillery. You have your battle standards, your flags for the market territory you've taken, and sloops, frigates, and the big guys, the ships of the line. And you have the Austrians here, Prussia, Spain, the coalition miners. Sorry for the glare. You have the Russians here, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which they don't have as wide of a variety of units that they can purchase. They can't purchase naval units. So you have the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. You have Denmark, Norway. You have Sweden right here. It got a little bit sloppy here. The United States, Britain, which also features Admiral Nelson, which is one of their cards here as well, too. So they can place him as early as round 2. And he's like basically the Napoleon of the sea in this game. So, whereas the French, they get their 1 hero piece. The British also get a hero piece. We have the Ottoman Empire, and then we have some of these other smaller ones. We have the French rebellions here, and they use like a French royalist flag for if they take over a territory. Once they are all killed, they never come back to the game, essentially. And then you have neutrals. So there's plenty of neutrals on the board. This is not necessary to include these. You can just have them off the board, and then if you want to attack a neutral or if someone attacks a neutral, you can just source the rulebook to see how many units are in that territory. If you really want to keep the clutter down, that's something you can definitely do. You don't need the neutrals. It's something I may not, or maybe I should include in the base game. I'm not sure. I'm still thinking about that. But yeah, those are the neutral chits. So that's everything right here. So you got all your powers, and yeah, I just thought it'd be cool to show you guys where the progress of this game has been. I hope we can get it on Kickstarter pretty soon. I have to do a few promotional things for it and get a few things in line first, but the game feels ready. It feels done. At this point, it's just execution, It's just me finding the time to get certain things done. That's really what it is at this point. That's the only thing holding it up, and it's me. I'm the bottleneck, not the game. The game feels great right now. So let me know if you have questions about it. Let me know if you're interested in the game. It really helps to know who's interested in this game. If you think you would be someone who would back the Kickstarter, leave me a comment, or I will leave all my contacts in the description of this video so that you can contact me and get on the email list or join the Facebook group where I'm regularly updating people on things. And that all helps. It all helps me keep going. I do have a website for the game going as well. It's grandcommandgaming.com. It's a fun game. I plan to start doing some public play tests of it very soon. I'd say within 2 to 3 weeks. And just so you can see how the game flows. So, all right, stay tuned, everyone.